I've done many things. It's always scary when I hear what my background was, because when I was actually going through university, my parents introduced me as a scientist. When I got my law degree, they introduced me as I used to be a scientist. Now that I'm verging into a venture capitalist role, they deny that I ever existed. So it's been a challenge. Was I the only one chilled to the bone when the tax man said, "I'll send a couple guys around your place"? Was that it? Okay. I'm going to be the only guy who doesn't actually give you useful information today. I've just come here to introduce Medwell Capital, who's almost new in the scene here in Edmonton. Give you a little bit of background on us. I'd be more than happy to give you any opinions with, of course, the disclaimer here that my opinions, although thoroughly researched and investigated, mean nothing, and I'll never, or I'll deny I ever made them. So as everybody sees that, okay, there we go. Medwell Capital is a new company based here in Edmonton. We used to be BioMS Medical. BioMS had two phase 3 clinical trials, thousands of patients on a clinical trial for secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. We did the largest biotech deal at that time in Canadian history with Eli Lilly. Unfortunately, the trial came back negative, but it was a good enough deal that we had some cash in the bank. We had some great team members that we'd assembled, and we had a question of what were we going to do. There was little appetite for in-licensing new technologies. We did not want to go through that cycle again. Why? Because there's a ton of healthcare companies that are out there right now that are terribly underfunded. And more importantly, they don't just need capital, they need assistance and help. The market is in a free fall at the moment. But the irony is, and maybe I'll mention this now instead of later, the irony is that we're not seeing a decrease on the actual costs or the revenue that's being generated by products that are on the market. What you're seeing is a valuation decrease in these companies because of the increased risk associated with actually developing them through so that they get to the market. I mean, there's many examples of things that are in phase 2 are not guaranteed to be able to get market approval. Things that actually have market approval do not have a guarantee that they'll remain on the marketable or commercialization scene for long because of failures or weaknesses in their development programs that only become apparent later on. So here's a slide basically saying, you know, these are the things that everybody needs to do if you are a clinical development company trying to get a pharmaceutical or a product on the market. At the same time, everybody's expected to be experts in what they're doing, which is raising funds and then executing on what they promised to do when they raise the funds in the first place. And it becomes a vicious circle for these companies. And what we noticed was out of the 100 companies, over 100 companies that we were looking at, about 40% of them needed clinical development or expertise on their management side. Now, ironically, the numbers that knew they needed this was much lower. But when we looked at it, we said there's real holes and gaps in what you're trying to do with the money that moves forward. So giving you the money is only the first step. You then have to go out and find the people. So then we took a look and said, okay, here's the valuations, as I'd mentioned, of all these companies. Valuations are dropping all through the market, but at the same time, the revenues are not decreasing on the actual products when they hit the shelves. So why are these revenues decreasing? Or I'm sorry, why are the markets decreasing? It's because of the risk, and people are really afraid of absorbing that risk, particularly in today's capital environment. So then we took a look and said, well, what do we have for people? We have assets, we have capital, we also have people that are very specialized in what they do, and that is in the form of clinical development, regulatory, commercial development, intellectual property. We had assembled this team specifically to be able to advance a prior product, but that's the kind of team that we could be able to put into place and assist and manage and work with the companies that we're investing that capital in. So that's where we saw that we had 4 potential sides that we could do: an advisory services side, a financial advisory services side, and then having the investment side, both in a direct and a private equity side, which the direct investments coming from Medwell Capital, private equity coming from a fund that is yet to be established, but of which there's certainly an awful lot of appetite for. We looked at what we had, and we had a hole in our expertise, and specifically in the investment banking, financial advisory services side. So essentially, we raided Desjardins. We had worked with some of the people in Desjardins as part of our raising $280 million for ourselves. So we went and acquired Nitin Kaushal, who was the healthcare banker of the year in Canada in 2008, and a couple of members from his team, Dwayne Lee and Michael Lorimer, who are now based in our Toronto office, which I think really broadened out the team and gave us exactly what we were looking for on that financial advisory side. Not only can we come in and make the direct investment, but we also have a team that can assemble to go out there and find you that larger source of money or the larger source of funds that healthcare really needs. Here we've got the side where we could map out and take a look at every step of the way as you make your way through the process of getting a therapeutic onto the market. And we have people that can come in and step in and assist you in every one of those stages, which of course is in our best interest as well, because we're invested in you as part of our capital needs. So not only do you get the money, but you also gain access to the people and expertise at an immediate level to be able to move your program forward. We don't see ourselves actually putting people on the ground and sitting down and doing the nitty-gritty details. What we provide is the kind of expert oversight of saying, this is the kind of person you need, but in the meantime, we'll roll up our sleeves and help you until you can find that person to suit your needs. And of course, using the money that we hopefully have provided you. I apologize for that. Let's see if I can stop that. I don't have to stare at that. Oh yes, here we go. This is just talking a little bit about what we've done. New slide deck, can you tell? A little bit touting our own horn and what we have. We have the clinical. We have a clinical operations manager. We have an MD that's been working in the clinical development and clinical strategy side for years. We have a regulatory affairs officer that we've maintained. Mostly the most popular person with all of our companies that we work with, of course, because regulatory affairs is the most difficult issue to address. And then a couple of things about what we've done in the past to tout ourselves. Right now, we are a very small fund. $33 million of working capital is not a large fund, even for Western Canada. We are addressing that by looking at the private equity side, using our team to actually fill out and support a larger investment organization. Normally, you're talking private equity or venture capital firms, you're talking about 4 people, and we've got a lot more than that. And that's where we see the clinical advisory side, the financial advisory side is supporting and basically allowing us to have a broader team of experts to come and bring to task on investment decisions and in assisting the companies beneath us. But in the other side of that coin is how do you support that kind of larger overhead? And that's through through clinical advisory services, either to the companies beneath us or third parties that we haven't invested in, and they're paying for our services as we move along. A good example of that is spectral diagnostics, and that's what we have here. And I think I've got a slide a little bit later on to speak more on that. The left hand of the side of the slide is, of course, how we're making revenue to make ends meet now, which is through the financial advisory commissions, consulting revenues from the clinical and financial advisory side. But there's a recognition that our true value drivers are going to be on that right-hand side, and that's making good investments and watching those grow as they move forward. Now, I don't see myself as a venture fund. We are looking a little later on, a little later stage, which also means that we're not looking for venture capital returns. I'm not looking for 5 to 10 to 20 times. We're looking for value creation events in a realistic time frame that'll assist that right-hand side of the slide to increase. Another summary here, and moving into our spectral diagnostics investment. Spectral Diagnostics was a company based out of Toronto that had a absolutely fascinating technology for identifying endotoxin levels in blood associated with blood poisoning or sepsis. They also then went out and acquired a technology that could remove endotoxin from the blood from a company called Torre. This was a product that had been marketed all over the world and met with some success. So not only did they have a diagnostic that could identify when you went to endotoxin levels that were too high, they now had the column that would allow you to remove it out. But they were moving into a phase 3 program in the US. And that was going to be a very expensive proposition, and at the same time with a big call for human resources as they move forward. So we've got, yes, spectral here, perfect. So what we did is we participated, I think, in the range of $12 to $14 million in a $20 million raise. Ironically, it was the Desjardins team that we've now acquired for ourselves that was instrumental in raising the remainder of that money. We also then provided them a whole assortment of consulting and services, both on the clinical side, investor relations, PR side. This is a public company, and we have a public company, and we've had much success with that in the past. And in exchange for that, we, of course, took a fairly healthy position in the company, and we are now working together to be able to get them through their phase 3 to completion and market approval, and then see that increase in our investment, hopefully at the end of that process. This is just a brief list of all the people that we've currently got associated and working with us in the business finance team, as I mentioned, Nitin, Dwayne, and Michael. Operations science, with me at the bottom. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I think the person who put this slide deck has some sort of predilection, or either that or they're a good judge of character. And then we have a strong board membership as well that we have listed on the right-hand side. I think I have burned through that specifically so that I can answer a question, because I've given you very little information except other than what we are, but I'd be more than happy to opine on anything if anybody had any questions in particular.